Hello, and welcome to Health and Fitness Redefined. I'm your host, Anthony Amen. Join me today as we take a dive into the world of health and fitness, where we're learning how to overcome adversity, to pick back versus fiction, and see health and fitness in a whole new light. Welcome, guys. Spring is right around the corner, so we're going to get this ball rolling about how to keep yourself happy, healthy, and I hope you've really been enjoying those quick tick episodes. We have quite a few in now, so please don't forget, if you have any topic suggestions, reach out. Health Fitness Redefined podcast at gmail.com. Without further ado, we're going to welcome today's guest, Chris Wilson. Chris, it is an absolute pleasure to have you today. Welcome, man.
Great to be here, my friend. Great to meet you. Great to have the opportunity to talk with your listeners.
Yeah, and for those that do not know, and I'm sure Chris will explain, he does host his own podcast, so this guy definitely knows what he's talking about. Strong by design, right up top if you're watching on video. So before we really get into that, besides the podcast, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the health and fitness world.
Yes, sir. Well, I have been in the health and industry space, health and fitness space since 1998 at the conclusion of college. And there's been a lot of interesting stories and relationships and experiences along the way, for sure. About 10 years ago, I landed a position here with Critical Bench. We are an online fitness and health publishing company. We create digital and physical programs and products to help people very easily and simply implement things into their life to help them move better, feel better, look better, things like stretching modalities, simple exercises people can do, postural correction things, targeting different areas of the body. So we have a lot of fun problem solving people's health and fitness issues and woes, so to speak. And I am the VP of content. So I get to oversee all things in the business that are being created as a new product or program to be sold. The podcast, our customer support, as well as several YouTube channels that a lot of people know us because of YouTube. So if people just type in Critical Bench on YouTube, we have 3 YouTube channels. One that's very large with, almost 4,000 videos on it. We have another smaller channel that's going to end up being only short content on there, but it's all health, fitness, workouts, exercises. And then we also have a podcast channel, which is really great too. So if people don't want to just listen, they want to watch, they can see us on the podcast on that channel.
Yeah, and it's definitely a different format when you're watching podcasts, but it's really cool. You guys are all over the map with the shorts, the podcast, and the longer format advice. And YouTube is a great resource to really watch and learn. As a trainer, just in general, like I use YouTube sometimes.
Sure.
It's just learn something new a little bit.
Well, it's an awesome resource that, didn't exist when I came out of college, and I was learning from people and workshops and live events and stuff and getting certified and getting my experience. There was no social media of any kind. Right. So it was a lot of face-to-face hands-on learning, which was great. And then, in the late 2000s, you have this thing called YouTube that shows up. That's a great opportunity for people to see and learn things from other kind of everyday people and different walks of life. And it was free. This is before I started working for Critical Bench that Mike started the YouTube channel. Was all powerlifting content. Back in the day, it was very masculine, very manly, heavy lifting, thus the name Critical Bench, all bench press related content and squatting and deadlifting. And then, like I said, we evolved to more of general health and wellness for men and women, pretty much over 30, over 35, when the body starts to kind of go through those changes and things start not feeling like they once did. And that's kind of what we've been tackling ever since And so I went from this shift of over 15 years of working face to face with people to being fully online and helping, but reaching more people now, so we can reach thousands, if not tens of thousands of people with our programming and all of our content. And that obviously feels really good because we're providing such a nice service to people, oftentimes for free.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we were talking a little pre-show as far as the different type of programs you guys offer. A big one that we really want to talk about today, because this topic we haven't really stressed too much, is that mind to muscle connection and really working with the older demographic. And I don't want to, it's a bad word, older, but you know what I'm trying to say.
More mature. More
mature, great word, which I'm just very steadily approaching. So the more mature audience, as opposed to the 16-year-olds trying to deadlift and bench 6,000 pounds.
Right.
So everyone thinks of the next Arnold.
Right.
Regardless, so what got you started in that specific realm? What opened that door? How did you transition from being in the Arnold bodybuilding realm to now the mind muscle connection realm?
Well, I guess, if you think back to when you were working with people, right, or a lot of trainers maybe listening who, you look at probably half or maybe even more than half of your clientele is typically people who are doing pretty well, men and women who can afford to have a trainer, which is not typically going to be a lot of teenagers and 20-year-olds paying for themselves to do it. It happens, but it's rare. Usually it's mom or dad that's facilitating that. Or you get the more mature man or woman who's really starting to take their health seriously, maybe in their 40s and 50s and beyond, and they really want to see improvement. They want to feel better, move better, and just get more out of life, enjoy life. And what I found was I kept being more attracted to the work I was doing with the older people, the older men and women, the plus 60s, if you will, because the dedication and the impact just felt so much more real and tangible to me when I could see what I was doing with them on a weekly basis was improving their livelihood, was improving their energy, their mood, was making their life safer, and preventing falls. And that's really the program that we created. Neurobalance Therapy is really a fall prevention program or a life extension program. It's super simple. And all of us know somebody that's older, a mother, a father, a sibling, a relative of some kind, somebody that we love, that we care about, that we would love to see them move a little bit more, but also move more safely in their life. And we know how catastrophic a fall can be when we get older, that a bump or a bruise when you're younger can actually turn into a fracture or a break or something worse when we're older, because our bodies just aren't quite the same. And our response to a trip, a slip, or a fall is different as we get older. So I was in real time when I would work with some of these clients. And I mean, I have so many names and faces in my head of people that I worked with for years, even people with neuropathy and people, post-paralysis type people they were like experiencing a better life because of the work they were putting in, coming to see me 2-3 times a week. And it was I became really close with these people. These are people like I was in their life. They would take me out to lunch. I felt almost like a grandson to say, here I am in my late 20s, let's say early 30s, and I'm helping people 50, 60, 70 plus. And it's almost like this like grandparent like kind of connection. And so you really take that seriously. That relationship becomes very important. And again, anyone listening who works one-on-one with a client or in group format, these people are important to you, and you want to see them enjoy their life. And it was just really, really great to do that work. And I mean, I even got to do it with my own mother as she was getting older and needed to move more, and she was actually battling cancer. And I got to work with her doing all these same exercises, and to watch her change and get stronger and move better and feel better. It was just fantastic.
Yeah, the impact of it, I guess, was more heartwarming and heartfelt. Just thinking, just a short, sweet version of kind of what you said. It's more awarding to watch somebody learn how to walk again and not have a trip and fall and have a better quality of life and do things that they once couldn't, as opposed to watching somebody go bench from the 300 to 350.
Right.
Like, that's great, but what does that do?
No, and you're exactly right. It's a great achievement. I don't want to take anything away. There's a huge part of me that will always love lifting weight and being strong and being a man and doing all that stuff. And I'm a huge proponent for athletic performance and implementation of, certain types of activity and exercise in your life. But there's a whole different type of gratification when you're making someone's life at that last third of your life, right? Let's say the plus 50 or 60, like that, those later stages of life where you really feel like if not for me, then certainly somebody else maybe would just be working with this person. But if not for the work I was doing with this person, their life might not look as good, might not be as safe. Their world might lose their independence or their freedom or feel isolated. And that's what people do when they start to live in fear or lose confidence in their daily activity and daily movement, is they shut down, they sit more, they stay at home more, and they isolate from people. And that's not what makes life fantastic. What makes life great is like getting out in the world and living and being outside and being outdoors and movement and sunshine and fresh air and all these things and activities. And that's what I had a big hand in for many, many years. And so I wanted to be able to take all of that passion and expertise and bring that to larger numbers. And that's what our program was able to do. And so we've been just seeing great success with it and get some great testimonials from people. And there's one thing, Anthony, I wanted to mention too, because I think it's kind of a myth. When people think of their brain and they think of the primary function of the brain, they think thought, they think memory, they think just the act of thinking. Like that's why we have a brain, right? That's what makes us human, our ability to do those things. While that is true, it's not the primary function of the brain. The primary function of the brain is to drive movement of the body. So I have a couple of great quotes from people far smarter than I that back up that claim. And some people might think, oh, well, that's not true. Well, it is, because there's so much overlap, and every single part of the brain has been proven and shown to facilitate movement and coordination of the body, right? I have a few quotes, but I'll just keep it at a couple. There's one here from a neurologist and author. His name is Oliver Sacks, and he said, much more of the brain is devoted to movement than to language. Language is only a little thing sitting on top of this huge ocean of movement. And I mean, this, again, that's a neurologist. Okay. This is somebody that's pretty well qualified to make such a claim. There's something else that is such a simple one, and everyone's heard of other quotes from this gentleman. His name is George Bernard Shaw. He has a lot of very famous quotes, but this one I just absolutely loved. And this is something that I love to talk about too, is he said, we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. And I mean, when it comes to movement and the term or the phrase, if you don't use it, you will lose it, that type of mentality, it goes right in line with what that is saying. And that's what happens to a lot of our bodies as we get older, is we start to pull back from doing certain things, almost like, well, that's a young person activity or a young person movement, so I'm going to stop doing that. And once you once you pull back from something or do it less frequently or less aggressively, let's say, or whatever, the body and the brain together start to lose the capacity to do that, right? You lose range of motion, you lose confidence, you lose strength in that area or of movement. And that's really where it starts. And it starts as early as our 20s. If you think about movement changing from our early years and teenage years to like our 20s when we're now adults, so we don't incorporate play into our everyday fitness and activity. And that's a real killer for our bodies and our neural pathways, like our brain speaking to all the different parts of our body neurologically, is those things start to dry up. Those avenues of stimulus start to weaken and dry up. And that's where we start to not feel as confident in our movement. And again, so it's just a really long, interesting way of saying, like, keep moving, keep exploring different types of movement patterns, and go back to doing stuff that gave you great joy and fun when you were younger. Even if you have to modify it, that's fine, modify it. But like, I mean, that if there's one takeaway from what I'm talking about is like, just get out there, try something new. I mean, look at what Silver Sneakers does for older people. If you've never heard of Silver Sneakers, it's a great formatting, aerobic and anaerobic training format for older people. And it's done in gyms and fitness facilities across the country. But it gets the older population to move in ways that are fun and feel good and safe under load, light resistance. But and again, it's one of the most important things we can do for quality of life.
I'd like to. That was a lot. So
I know.
I think I would like to just kind of break that down and start with that. So the first thing you mentioned was when you were young, in your 20s, that's when you really start to lose that playfulness and willingness to go out and do something. And that's a multifaceted reason, but I think the most important one to kind of start with is, of course, for every individual, it's different, but our frontal lobe stops developing around 25, 26, which is, by the way, why you can rent a car at 25. The frontal lobe controls risk-taking, is probably the most predominant thing for it. It associates activities with certain amount of risk of whether you should or shouldn't be doing, which is why a lot of younger people, like teenagers, like, let me go do this crazy thing, and who cares, because their frontal lobe isn't fully developed. But I think we've taken that side of it and then pushed it too far beyond its extreme. I do agree that we need to not maybe jump off a 20-foot bridge onto next to a scary rock. But why do we let that risk-taking aversion get put off for simple things as playing a sport, or even if it's not a high impact, like professional level? I'm talking like football, for example, play flag football. It's the non-impact version of it that's going to be safer for you and help keep you young and playful and doing things, or just going for runs or hiking a mountain. These are all things that we use as like, oh no, I can't do that scary object. And then we constantly reinforce that scary object from our society and our peers. And then all of a sudden everything becomes scary.
It's 100%. Once you have fear-based thought, fear-based thinking about stuff, and you have a new belief system that you are buying into and telling yourself, that internal voice, the internal conversation, you will talk yourself out of stuff real quick. And then it's much, much harder to go back to something that you've avoided with this new belief system. And so stepping out of the comfort zone, we hear everybody, right? All the gurus, all the mindset guys out there and ladies, in order to grow, in order to experience life and to kind of move the needle in your life, to continue to get better in life, is you have to take risks. And those risks don't have to be life-threatening. but they certainly need to maybe make you a little bit uncomfortable. And so you get that very common phrase, get comfortable at being uncomfortable. And it's very, very true. And we see that more certainly with our senior men and women, because they get very comfortable at a certain type of lifestyle. And once that isolation and maybe that connection to things starts to weaken, their body goes right along with it. So those neural pathways, the way they think and the way they function, the way they feel, and the way their body can respond to movement is very different from where they were in their teenage years, 20s, 30s. Like, you can skate for a little while, right? Being idle and being sedentary, just because you're younger and your body, is still going to be able to be capable of certain things. But there is a tipping point at some point. If you are not, earnestly trying to incorporate activity into your life. And it can just start with walking. I know. And this, the other thing too, is we were talking before we recorded about, it's like an intimidation thing sometimes for people, because they see other trainers, other experts working with clientele, and they're doing advanced things. And somebody that's new or a beginner or uncertain, they might see that and go, oh, I can't do that. And maybe that's true, not yet. And that's maybe not where you need to be starting, but you need to start somewhere. And maybe it's something just like walking for 5 to 10 minutes a day, and then go from there, right? Or do body weight balance exercises. That really is what our program is predicated on, is very simplistic stuff that's very safe. Just standing, holding on to something, and getting good and getting comfortable at lifting like a leg off the ground and things like that. And it very quickly can lead to recapturing that confidence in movement again.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. And I really want to talk a little more in detail about ways to prevent it, and talk a little more about the use it or lose it phenomenon, because I have some interesting tidbits about that one. But we're going to take a quick break from a word from our sponsor, guys. So stay tuned, and we will see you on the flip side. For us, we know what it's like to feel unhealthy, depressed, and downright defeated. We want to show others there is a right way, and through fitness, you can do anything you set your mind to. Fitness can give you that motivation, confidence, energy you need to bridge that mental gap and prevent you from missing important life events. We understand it's about feeling better, living longer, and being good examples for our kids. We understand this because we live it. And for us, that's the redefined difference. Hey everybody, and welcome back. We have Chris Wilson here, and we're going to start and just kind of pick the conversation right back up again of mind to muscle connection, as well as that use it or lose it phenomenon, which was so nicely worded. But I want to do two parts of this. One is the most self-explanatory side, the muscular side of it. So we all have muscles on our body. If you didn't, you'd be dead. So just keep that in mind. And obviously everyone has different proportions of muscles. And the way we grow muscle, which we've discussed many times, is you create stress, you tear that muscle up, and your body goes, oh, you tore it, I need more. And it builds more muscle over the next 2 days. And you constantly repeat that, and you get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now we're going to talk about the flip side. Anthony, why do I lose muscle when I stopped working out? I was so much bigger when I was 20, and I'm 40 and I'm not. Well, your body goes, wow, that pound of muscle is very taxing on our body. It weighs a lot. It's very caloric heavy. So muscle, the reason you lose weight by having more muscle is because you're increasing your metabolic load. You're increasing how many calories a day you're burning at rest. But your body doesn't like maintaining that. It's too much work. So if you're not using it and it's not tearing, it's like, all right, let's start getting rid of some. let's start dialing this tone back over and over and over and over again. And that's why when you take a break for an extended period of time, you're going to slowly start losing muscle. And especially as you age, your body just like, well, we can't do as much, so we can't have as much muscle in our body. So you just start really dialing back how much you have on your body, along with a bunch of other hormone related stuff. But that's just a simplistic version of why it happens. You have anything to add to that? You're like,
No, I love it because I mean you're exactly right, and it's a great simple way of explaining it. Is it's your body will almost fight you for what's best for you, right? It's like, wow, this muscle is really hard to maintain because you're metabolically better off. Your body is operating like a high end piece of machinery. The more muscle that it has, but it needs more protein. It needs more water. It needs more activity. It needs to maintain that, right? Just like a Ferrari needs a lot more heavy duty maintenance in order to keep that thing running at an optimal level, right? It's a lot easier to have a $10,000 piece of crap car and not give it very much love or attention, and it'll still perform well for you. You know, you got to put more into the body and to maintain that on a regular basis. And the body, I mean, unbelievably, somebody that's extremely fit with a lot of muscle, and I'm sure you've experienced this or seen this before, or seen heard a story about it. Somebody super healthy that has some type of major health thing happen, a health crisis, right? Where they're in a hospital bed for maybe just a week. You will lose a very high percentage of all that hard-earned muscle just because you were sitting in a bed for like a week without moving your body. You will lose pounds and pounds and pounds of muscle. And I remember seeing that firsthand with a friend of mine in high school who ended up with bacterial pneumonia. And this was a big, strong, over 6 foot football player, big kid, right? Muscle and just a big, strong kid. And he, like, a week went by and I saw him in the hospital. Like, it didn't even recognize him. He looked so gaunt and lost all. It was like 1 week. I'm like, this is unbelievable how the body, but this is what happens in a slower process for us when we get older. You know, say over 50, over 60, when we start to pull back from that regular activity, is every week we're just a few notches down from where we were, right? And so you have to go out of your way to hydrate, out of your way to keep that protein coming in. That's the building block of muscle. And if you don't have the amino acids and the proteins in your system, the muscle can't grow.
Yeah, and I think the second part is really where I want you to dive into it. So we have muscular and then we have nerves. Guys, they're two totally separate things. So what is your neural pathway? It's kind of what you said, your brain controls way more than just thought, and it controls your nerves. Your nerves are the electric signal that go from your brain down your spine and go spread out over different parts of your muscles to activate them. Because if we didn't have that, your muscle would just kind of be there and there'd be no movement created whatsoever. So why is that relevant with the use it or lose it kind of phenomenon? And your nerves, if they aren't constantly activated and constantly engaged, it's kind of like, I like the car example you use. Have you ever kept a car in a garage for 6 months and didn't turn it on? What happens?
Won't start.
The battery just goes, nope. So then you got to get it jump started, and you got to get a car removing and redriving that car so it automatically starts up next time and not let it sit in your garage for 6 months.
Right. Yeah. You probably want to drain all the fluids out of it too and start with fresh oil and fresh gas and get the lubrication going again and get the car used to moving again. It's gonna be a little cranky there.
It definitely won't like you, especially the Ferrari. So, that's exactly the same way our nerves work, in a simplistic way. It's we need to constantly engage them, we need to constantly use it, we need to constantly drive our sensory system and use it to help, one, make it better, or two, just prevent it from getting worse. And this, especially as you age, is one of the most common reasons of why your 70, 80, 90-year-old crowd will trip and fall a lot. because they don't have that proprioception, which is knowing where your body is. It's using those pathways to figure out where you are in space without using your eyes. So you don't have to stare at the ground every 3 steps you take to make sure you're not going to fall even though the ground's flat. So we have to use that and constantly work that in order to make sure it's firing right so we don't trip and fall, especially as we age.
That's right. Yeah. I'll add to that. Every single person listening has experienced catching their toe on something when they were walking and kind of tripping. Maybe most times they catch themselves from a fall, right? You kind of catch your toe on a sidewalk or on a change of surface, but you catch yourself because your reaction at time is pretty quick, right? And you're strong and you can respond quickly to that. Well, something happens to a lot of people with their lower bodies or with their extremities as a whole as they get neuropathy or peripheral neuropathy, where the nerves in their extremities start to lose that firepower and they weaken. There's numbing and tingling and loss of sensation and function. And what happens is something like foot drop will occur. Foot drop is where your toe just kind of drops down when you go to pick your leg up to walk and your toe just drops. So it's either called drop foot or foot drop. And what happens with our older population is they will catch their toe on something and then not respond well or react well to that trip. And then they go down, they fall. And that fall, as I said earlier, is more catastrophic. Typically, it's not just a bump or a bruise. It could be a head injury or it could be something major. And so it's the neural pathway. I like to everything's like automotive related here, but because it's such a strong analogy and I think people can really resonate with it. If you think of a highway system from your brain to every single part and every single muscle of your body, and that highway system has a lot of cars on it, constantly driving, and cars and trucks and everything. And every day is a good flow north and south and back and forth. But what happens where some of those pathways start to get used less and less, and so those roadways start to break down, maybe grow weeds, get cluttered, or just it's just not getting used the way it once was. And so it starts to get kind of like we're not going to travel on that road anymore or that path anymore. And so those roads get closed or shut down. That's your body. So there are certain nerves that are pretty important that start to die off or dry up, so to speak. And now you can reestablish them, which is really cool. Okay, but it's a little harder to do as we get older. If we've ignored those neural pathways long enough, it can be very hard to reestablish. But the body is an unbelievable machine, and it can come back if you just give it the consistency and the stimulation that it needs. You can bring those, form new, stronger neural pathways can be done. And that's what the idea of our program is to reestablish those neural connections and make you feel and move with confidence again.
Yeah, and I think the best example for that is I work a lot with post-surgical clients, people that have had a lot of spinal issues and nerves severed in their spine, and then they can't feel that anything. There's zero sensation. Drop foot's very common. Connects to your lumbar. So I've seen them get that back. So if you think that just because you have an aging and it's just maybe not working optimal that you can't get it back, I've seen people who had the nerve completely get sensations back and be able to control areas that they once couldn't. So it's definitely not only possible, it's very probable that just an age-related incident with your nerves can be reestablished. And I want to ask you more specifically, Chris, just to really, now that we scared the crap out of everybody.
Sure. Don't get older.
Don't get old. Is how do we do this? What steps, steps can we take to help move forward and help either prevent or reverse these kind of issues?
Yeah. The idea of the program, it's such an easy concept. It's really just stimulating what's one of the most sensitive parts of your whole body. And most people might think, well, my genitalia. Okay, well, yes, that's probably number one on both men and women. But what's the second most? Bottoms of your feet. You have more sensory information in the bottoms of your feet than just about any other part of your body. So we need to be barefoot as much as we can, more often than we typically are, most people. Maybe consider a minimalist shoe, perhaps. But other cultures have been studied before, and it's amazing how much better physically these cultures are that are more barefoot. I mean, there's a very strong correlation to being barefoot and being stronger in our lower body in terms of function and strength output. And so being barefoot more often, and that's what's encouraged with our programs, to do the whole routine barefoot, or at least with a socked foot. And so we start the program with stimulating the foot with a spike massage ball, rolling it for a period of time underneath your foot to start to awaken and kind of start to get some sensations through that deep peroneal nerve and the other nerves of the foot that end in the feet. And then you do a series of short foot exercises followed by 8 different movements of the body that are very gentle. It's really not an exercise program as much as it is really just a pure balance and movement-based program. So it's not going to get you out of breath or get the heart rate up excessively or anything like that. It's really very simple and very easy, very gentle. It'd be great for, a grandparent or an older parent or whatever. If you think of somebody in your life that needs to move more, needs to do it safely, needs to be able to get from their bedroom to their bathroom better. I mean, that's where most of these falls happen for the older population. They happen in their home on a path that's traveled most frequently, right? Up and down certain stairways that they need to travel on a daily basis, or from their bedroom to their bathroom, which is a very common movement flow. So that's really it, and it's designed to not intimidate, and it's designed to easily implement into your life and do inside of like a 10-minute period of time. But as we know with all things, Anthony, if we're consistent and we stick to something, you're going to see and feel results. It's as true as if you're going to eat clean for 90 days, you're going to lose weight, you're going to feel better, and life is better. It's the same thing with this program. If you stick to it and give yourself a little bit of this gentle love with the program, you will see a difference. You'll feel a difference. You'll move with confidence, and hopefully your life will be improved.
Yeah, it's really cool. The spike ball to help create that kind of sensory feedback is definitely something I would recommend to people, is getting used to it. And I want to mention something about shoes.
Yes.
They're great for padding. They're great for running, whatever. But they are absolutely horrible with working the ankle in more than one direction. They only go forward, back. They're not good at going side to side like your ankle's created for, like proper pronation, supination. And they don't align your body properly when you're standing up straight. Running shoes are tilted. Like if this is my bone right here, they're tilted forward, because when I run, I want to keep my weight at my toes. Yep. So it's constantly trying to push me forward. It's like someone has a hand behind you that's constantly pushing you slightly forward. That's what running shoes always do. You're always in that position. Where just as weightlifting, it as an example, if I'm squatting, I don't want to wear running shoes. I don't want to push forward. I want to come back. So at that point, I'm either going barefoot or I'm buying a training shoe that's designed to be flat, but then still with the padding. There you go. There's a training shoe. Perfect example.
This is my boy, Steven Sashin over at Zero Shoes. He's an amazing guy, and he created this company. And this is one of the 2 big minimalist shoe companies in the market. And I love these things. I love them. I can't say enough about them.
I don't blame you. And then the second part of it, besides the weightlifting, is we need to train the nerves around not only the foot, but the ankle. We need to build those small little ligaments that connect the ankle to the foot to help give you more balance and stability. I mean, a simple test, which I'm sure you do in your program, is just stand up and stand on one leg. Yep. Can you do it? So many people can't even just do something as simple as that. The next step would be, all right, stand on one foot, close your eyes.
Right.
How much do you rely on your eyes for feedback in order to be able to stand on one foot? About 80% of people can't do it.
They'll fall right over in under 3 seconds. Most people.
Oh, yeah. And so it's training your body to not constantly rely on your eyes, to use those nerves that you have there for a reason. So you don't have to sit there and stare at your freaking feet every time you take a step, to really be able to prevent yourself from falling and enjoy the things around you, as opposed to constantly looking down.
That's right. You're right. You see a lot of people when they get older, they're looking down at every step because of that fear of, geez, I better know where I'm stepping here. I don't have that proprioception is not what it once was, where I just walked without, almost carelessly. Right. And so that's a huge part of it. No, I love that you brought that up. I had a thought there, and it kind of went right out of my head, just like most things anymore, unless I write it down on a Post-it note, but it'll probably come back to me.
It's all right. Maybe this will help. So just as far as program design, a simplistic task to do either with yourself or with the partner is A, try standing on one foot, like I said, and 2, try doing a different activity while you're standing on one foot to help prevent yourself from being super focused on that. One of my favorite things is a ball toss. If I take a little light ball, I stand like 5-6 feet away from you, and we're just throwing that ball back and forth, people are going to look at that and they go, that's not losing. You're right, but we're working on ankle stability. We're working on sensory feedback. You don't realize it, but when you're going to throw a ball, you have to move your body and momentum in a certain direction to push that ball away from you, to push it out to the person 5 feet away. So that force of pushing forward isn't impacting your ankle the same way as taking a step, where I'm pushing and moving my weight forward. So my ankle has to learn to respond to that and not be like, oh no, forward and fall. So even a lightweight ball can do something as simple as that to help you move better.
Yeah. One of the best training tools, like you could dump, and I'm not bashing like BOSUs and stability balls and stuff, but that's where a lot of people will go, especially when you're green or inexperienced as a trainer. You want to get to the fun stuff, to the toys, and implement that and look cool with your client, right? One of the best things you could do is just use a tennis ball. Use a tennis ball and give your client, and I'm talking to, the people working with older people, is get them catching and throwing that ball from different planes of motion, standing on one leg, closing your eyes, different patterns, different tempos, all those types of things. I did a brain health trainer course last year that was really super amazing. And it was almost like I relearned some of these things. And I got to see it again because I'd been kind of out of touch with doing that face-to-face with people for a period of years. And it was fun to go back and think back like, oh yeah, I remember doing that stuff and how helpful that was. As simple as it was, it's not so much about strength. It's about quality of movement and brain stimulation and sensory stimulation. And the point I wanted to just make real quickly that I had forgotten and I remembered it. What's something that we lose when we get older? Well, we lose our vision and we lose our sense of hearing to some degree. We're not as good visually, and we're not as good auditory system. So our vestibular system and our eyesight diminishes with age. And so that directly affects how we feel when we move and how confidently and how well we move, right? Because it's a huge part of like our balance is from our eyes and our ears. And I don't think people give that enough thought, but go get your eyes checked, go get your hearing checked, because that could be a difference maker in how you're moving and how you're functioning in the world.
Stepping back to that visual feedback. If our eyes are impaired, then we don't have good quality visual feedback to help our proprioception to learn where we are. And I want to mention just 2 little quick more points that I think are important. The first one is I'm going to reference an episode we did a while ago just on brain health and the importance of preventing dementia. Studies have shown again, and I want to reiterate this point, that the best way to prevent, or not prevent, but I guess just push off the onsets of dementia
Yeah.
is not brain games like a lot of people do. They help, but it's such a small percentage.
Yes.
What helps even more is just basic exercise. And then you want to take that to the next step. They showed that doing basic exercises with brain functioning activity is actually the best way to help your memory and your function. And well, actually, you'll start sweating. I've seen this. Like the amount of overload it takes for you to think about more than one thing at once, like maybe playing a ball passing game and quizzing the person on multiplication by factors of 4. And you're doing that back and forth, and they're just pouring sweat, even though they're not using their bigger muscle groups. And this is the same concept to my second point, where if I give the brain a more complex workout, something it just can't say, all right, gonna shoot down this neural pathway and activate that, like a bicep curl. It's like, okay, contract the bicep, contract the bicep. If I told the brain, all right, you're gonna contract the bicep, then you're gonna move into the sagittal plane, and by moving your arm forward, and then you're going to turn into the transverse plane and twist while you're doing that. Now your brain's like, hold on, let me figure this out. And then you'll see just little simple things by throwing yourself into a bunch of different movements that are way more complex, like step to the left and step to the right, then go up, then go down. It's going to make you work a lot harder and really increase how much power your brain has to use, because it needs some more electric signals down those pathways to get it going.
It's exactly right. No, it's a great point. I appreciate you mentioning that. It's so true. We've both experienced that in real time. People in front of us, like breaking a sweat, not really doing much of anything. It's like, man, their heart rate's not even up that high, right? But when you get the brain really working hard to with thoughts and responsiveness, right? Under some type of movement pattern, there's a lot going on at one time. It's like major multitasking. And that's why hiking in particular is considered one of the best in the world forms of activity, because there's so much planning with every step. Elevation change, different surfaces, right? Different muscles utilized. And so hiking is, and plus you're outside in nature. So there's so many other side benefits of it. But I would encourage anybody, like if you're looking for like a really amazing form of exercise that as you get older, that's so rewarding and fun, would be hiking. And it doesn't have to be something aggressive, but it's wonderful. And I love it as a young, a husband with 2 younger children going for walks in the woods with my wife. It's one of my favorite things.
I do the same exact thing with my wife.
Yeah.
Hiking is our favorite activity. Just unfortunately, it snows 6 months out of the year.
Yeah.
But Chris, I want to wrap this episode up, and I want to just ask you the same 2 questions I ask everybody. I think the first one's going to be hard for you, but I think that's okay. So if you were to summarize this episode in 1 or 2 sentences, what would be your take-home message?
Never stop moving your body, no matter what it is that you enjoy doing, or what you deem safe for you in your particular place in life, no matter your age. Find something that gets you up, vertical, moving every single day of your life, that will lead to it will lead to a better life, just because you've incorporated some type of physical activity.
Totally, it was a hard one. You got to add a lot into that.
Yeah. Never stop moving. There we go. 3 words.
There you go. Simple. Never stop moving. I love it. And then the second question, which is the easiest one: how can people find you, get a hold of you, give us all the good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one of the best places to go is actually go to the YouTube and type in Critical Bench or Strong by Design podcast. Both of those things will lead you to a plethora of video content, thousands and thousands of videos. You get to know what we're all about at Critical Bench. It's such a big platform for us, with just so many different types of videos, free workouts, and great exercises for everybody, young, middle-aged, older, beginner to advanced. So Critical Bench, on YouTube or Strong by Design podcast, and you could see all of our most of our episodes on that channel, as well as the other channels. And then you could simply go to if you're more interested in the balance stuff specifically, or want to share balance information with a loved one, a friend, a family member who could benefit from that, have them go to neurobalancetherapy.org/main. That's neurobalancetherapy.org/main. It'll be a video that plays, but if you don't want to watch the video, go to click away from it, and then you can just read all about the program and why we designed it and what it can do for you.
I love it, Chris. And thank you for coming on, guys. And thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Health and Fitness Redefined. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button and join us next week as we dive deeper into this ever-changing field. And remember, fitness is medicine. Until next time.